Hi there, welcome to the channel. My name's Shane. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at putting the valve chest, right-hand ramshaft bracket, the rock shaft, or ramshaft, and the hydraulic cylinder cover back on this old David Brown 990 tractor over here. I've been working on refurbishing the hydraulics on this tractor over the last several videos, kind of doing a series here on it. If you're new to the channel, go back and look at some of those other videos. I have a playlist on these. But today is the day where we get all this stuff back installed. There's actually a trick that we will go over here in a few minutes around keeping one of the pieces and parts of the pipe system in place in the tractor. The annoying little lube pipe that fits on the side of the valve chest. We'll learn a little trick to keep it in place while we're reinstalling everything. So if you're interested in this, stay with me. We'll go through the process I took to put this back in. So stay with me. Okay, let's revisit this lube pipe for just a moment. This lube pipe fits on the side of the valve chest right there into this hole. It simply fits up against it, and if you remember, the bolt through the axle casting holds it in place. During reinstallation of the valve chest, this lube pipe needs to be in place, but offset enough to where the valve chest will slide by it. Ollek has got some tips for us on this so that we don't have the situation where this is not in the right spot and you hit it with a valve chest and it just falls down into the axle casting. That's very annoying. So Ollek's got some tips here for us. I'll put this up on the screen and I'll read to you here from it. There's a trick to keeping the pipe in position when the valve chest is pushed in place. Push the end of the pipe, this is the end of the pipe right here it's talking about, into about 5 millimeters into the pipe that it goes into there. There's another pipe on the inside of the tractor that this fits into. Push it in about 5 millimeters. Then fasten a wire to the snout right here. And then route this wire up through the top, out through the opening on the top of the rear axle, and tighten it to that bolt that's on the side of the tractor. Basically, you're keeping some tension on this lube pipe by having this wire come up and out and kind of wrap it around that bolt a little bit. Let's measure over 5 millimeters, and I'm just going to make a mark. You know, visual indicator how much I should push this in. Doesn't have to be exact, but he said about. Okay, sorry about the handheld camera here, but the end of the lube pipe goes right there into that pipe. And since I have marked the end of my lube pipe, I know about how far to stick it in here. Try to do this through the camera. All right, and then we will adjust that up just a bit where it's right there on that bolt. You see some of my black mark from my Sharpie still showing, so I'm not too far into it, maybe about 6 mil or so. Now we'll take some wire and wire that snout up through the top of the hole here and route it down and put it around that bolt to have some support for that lube pipe. All right, there's you a good view. I did turn that bolt about one turn. If you remember, I was at about 7.5 turns from the previous video where I disassembled all of this. Now my black marks that I made are fairly visible, so that's about 5 millimeters in. It is touching the bolt now. It's wired up. It should give me enough clearance to get everything through there. We'll see though. Right there, should be all right. And look at there. No lifting, no hernias, no slip discs. All good. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Shaft is on, so we will start by putting the cam and nuts and washers back on. If you remember when I took this apart, I had actually 2 washers on 1 stud for the cam, but I'm going to make sure that I do that correctly this time. When you're reinstalling it, let's make sure I'm in frame here. When you're reinstalling this thing, it goes, you see this little divot right here? That goes down and it hooks onto the height control push rod in that little divot there. There's a specific adjustment there we'll do with this. Once we get it all back together, we'll go through all the adjustments and stuff. But if you remember when I took it off, this little divot right here, this little curved spot, is supposed to touch that height control push rod. So when you're reinstalling it, it goes back in the hole like this so that that can rest on that height control push rod. Okay, I think I've got you guys in a better position here. And let's see how we can do this without making a huge mess. I got my headlamp on now so we can see. Make sure I don't bump the camera. Okay, you guys tell me, do you see 2 studs through that? There we go, I can see that now. Yes, there are 2 studs coming through the holes on that cam. And the divot thing that I was telling you about is on the bottom. There we go. First washer is on. There we go. It's on there. Good deal. I'm just going to loosely tighten these on here. I'm not going to tighten them up just yet. I'll tighten them up when they get it all back on there. Just keeping that cam plate from coming off with these. Once I get this thing back up on the tractor and installed, I'll tighten these back up. You can't see anything about what I'm doing except for this blue hand in your way. Okay, so here's my check. O-ring is replaced on the end of the shaft. O-ring is replaced here. I have greased the end of the shaft, installed the cam plate, installed the lock nut, the washers, and the Ollek nuts. Replaced the O-ring down here. Greased it up. I've greased up the bearing down here. Cleaned everything up. All right, let's try the initial lift. We've got some heaviness on the right hand side we're going to have to account for. Let's see what that looks like. Let's see what happens here. Before I put this back in, I do need to put the 2 O-rings on there. The service manual says to dab the O-rings with a little bit of grease, and stick them on to the end of the valve chest here. Make them stick while you're putting it back in the hole. All right, there we go. I've got it connected up through. The O-ring is in place now. Just a little bit of pressure that way to get that O-ring to seat. I did grease the inside of the casting right here where that goes. That O-ring is correct, and it did seat. As you can see there, I've got this thing up on some supports. That one, a piece of wood to support it up so it's not just laying on the cam inside. These are the holes right here where those O-rings fit in. It's the wrong dang size O-ring. It is not a -11 at all. All right, I had a problem. Bought the wrong O-rings. The Case IH website has a typo in the description for the O-rings that go on the front of the valve chest over there. And I've been going by the dash number for those O-rings. Verify your dimensions. There's a typo in the Case IH website part description. It's not a -11, it's a -111. The dimensions are 7/16 inside diameter, 5/8 outside diameter, 3/32 cross section. Those are the right ones. These are not. These are tiny little things compared to the big ones that go on the front of the valve chest. I started to put those on. I'm like, wait a minute. Something is not right here. Wait just a minute. So I've got the right O-rings now. Verify your dimensions. All right, for this right-hand ramshaft, as you raise it up, it starts to tilt itself down that way, right? And it'll hook. The casting inside will hit the tip of this cam down on the end there. And I think if you put too much pressure on it, it'll have a tendency to snap one of these studs, which is what happened to me a couple of years ago, a year ago, whenever it was. When I had to take this off to begin with, I was raising these arms up. If you watched a previous video of mine, I talk about that, about not raising these arms up while it's on the tractor past a certain point, especially with the left-hand cover off. It'll let these arms go up further than they're meant to. And I was pushing, and I basically got it to a bind and snapped one of these studs off that hold that cam plate on. So my thinking is, while you've got this up in the air and that kind of thing, it's not necessarily a good idea to leave it for long periods of time without something supporting under the bottom to keep it up off of that up off of that cam plate. At least that's the thought. I don't know if that's right or not. Springtime has come in central Alabama and there is pollen everywhere. So while I get the O-rings on, I'm going to support the front of the valve chest. I'm not looking at my back. I'll change the angle for you. Yeah, I'm going to support the front of the valve chest. Something to give it a little bit of support. Keep it off that cam. All right, the book says to use a little grease. That's not a little grease, that's a lot of grease. To keep these in place. I've been keeping most of the parts that I've been using here inside of the house so that they don't get pollen and all kind of nastiness on them. But I did leave this for a few days outside hooked up, and it looks like I got some trash on the gasket. I'm gonna have to pick some of that stuff off and probably reapply a little bit of that gasket sealer to freshen it up a little bit. I'll do that off camera here in a minute. All right, those O-rings fit, thankfully. There we go. Okay. All right, now I got to go around to the front to make sure that that connecting link is going to come through. All right, what can y'all see in there? Is that lube pipe still in place? I can't really see. Maybe you can though. So I had to reach in there and grab that connecting link arm right there and pull it up to where it would be on the edge there. All right. It's in. The valve chest is in the hole at least. It's annoying to get it in there. I'm gonna go handheld here for a moment. All right. As you can see there, it is in. One of the major issues is trying to get top of these valves, top of the bypass and hole valves into there. You kind of got to go down at an angle with the valve chest to get it in there, at least from my experience. And then it gets hung up right there. So be careful of it getting hung right there. You see, you got to lift it up a little bit now. And all the while, trying not to knock that lube pipe out. And I apologize that you guys can't see a lot of this, but that just went in. That just went in, at least a little bit. I am getting really close. Still kind of catty cornered a little bit. Take a look right here. You see the valve coming through. You see that that lower and control knob valve thing is coming through, and it's straight. I'm going to turn it to the side just a little bit, just like that. You see how I've turned it kind of to where it's not touching the block there. I need to raise it just a bit. Look at there. It went in. It went in. And the lube pipe did not fall. I did not hear it. I didn't touch it. I don't think I moved it. All right. The housing here was tilted to the right and kind of caught on the shaft going into the right-hand ramshaft bracket. So what I did to get it kind of unstuck was I took a piece of wood right here and just kind of stuck it in right there and kind of just pushed gently, and it freed it up. It got jammed up right here on the shaft where it goes into the ramshaft bracket. All right, this thing's getting in my way. Stay. Just snug that up. All right, just snugging these up. Yeah, Ollek's advice on the trick to inserting this thing back in there without knocking that lube pipe down works really, really well. It works okay. Didn't bind anything up on the connecting rod, connecting link. Deal. The rate of lowering knob valve thing is okay. Sweet. So everything's in. I've got these snugged up. The lube pipe I think is still in place. And there's absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to video what I'm about to do with the lube pipe. But what we do have is footage here that I shot prior to putting this back in that will explain to you the process of putting the lube pipe back in place to the side of the valve chest. So keep watching. Okay, I'm showing you this from the rear perspective, but when in reality, you'd be doing this from the front of the valve chest, in front of the tractor over here where the quadrant goes on. But I'm showing you this from the back view here because it's a whole lot clearer to see. There's a bigger hole. You can see more about what I'm about to tell you here. Let's put Ollek's post back up on the screen. I only went through the first part of it earlier. Now we're going to go through the rest of it. This part assumes that you've put the valve chest back in. He says, check that there's enough space between the pipe and the valve chest and push the valve chest into place. Basically, you have to give enough room for the valve chest to slide past. The connecting link has to go through, and the lowering control has to go into this slot right here, I think, if I remember correctly. Then grip the bend of the pipe through the front opening. Front opening is this part down here where I've got that piece of cardboard. Grip the bend of the pipe through the front opening between your index and middle fingers. He's talking about the bend of the pipe right here. Grip it through this hole with your index and middle fingers, kind of putting it in between. You're basically going to support the lube pipe with your fingers while with the other hand removing this wire right here. You'll take the wire away from the snout and bring it back up through the hole and disconnect it from the bolt over here while supporting the lube pipe. All right, once you've got the wire out, lift and lower the front of the pipe right here at the bend. At the same time, with the other hand, you are tightening this bolt. You're basically going to be pushing the lube pipe that way toward the valve chest and toward that conical opening that's on the side of the valve chest. So as you're holding this up, this bend in the pipe, with your index and middle fingers kind of between them, you'll be screwing this bolt in with the other hand. He says you'll feel when this opening starts to go into the valve chest. As you lift and lower this bend of this pipe gently, he says you'll feel when the conical opening goes into the valve chest. He says the pipe will be in place when you cannot move the bend in the pipe up and down anymore. Tighten the bolt a little bit with a wrench and then use the lock nut to lock it in place. That's the procedure for making sure that your lube pipe is in the correct spot. Okay, that had to be one of the easiest things I've done. If you follow Ollek's directions exactly to the letter, putting the lube pipe on is stupidly simple. I did have to go cross-handed though. I tried it with my right hand inside, holding the lube pipe between the middle finger and the index finger. Just kind of holding it in place, just like that. And I was reaching over here with my left, but I couldn't get enough leverage because I'm over the sidewall here. So I had to cross. I had to come in with my left inside and my right hand over the top so that I could turn it between my thumb, turn the screw between my thumb and index finger. That worked great. That worked really, really great. That lube pipe is in there. I think I'm gonna go grab a bore scope and take a look at it on the inside and see what we can see. What do y'all think? You think it's in the hole? I believe it is. You can see the screw touching the back of the lube pipe there, and you can see that it's firm up against the hole. I think we're in business. Okay, do you remember in a previous video when I was taking off the cover here, this ramshaft came out and it wasn't supported at all. So we made the determination that having the straps in place while putting the cover back on was an absolute requirement. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to leave all of the straps in place while the cover goes back on. As you can see here from the top view, that this is in its hole. It's in there. It's not going anywhere. There's just going to be a little bit more aggravation with having the straps in place and things to get the bolts back in, but at least the arms will be held up in the air with the straps back here. So I think we're going to be in a much better place where we won't get bound up with the bolts going back in. All right, this is the left hand hydraulic cylinder cover. Goes on like that. Before I turn it around here and show you some other stuff, I have looked up the tightening torques. The long bolts, these 5/8 bolts, are supposed to be torqued to 140 pound-feet. The through bolts that are shorter are also 5/8, and they get torqued to 140 pound-feet as well. The bolts that go into the axle at the bottom over here are 1/2-inch bolts, and they should be torqued to 75 pound-feet. Now, for the right-hand side where the valve chest sits, just talking about torque specs for just a minute, I can't find in either of the service manuals that I have a specification for the torque settings for that right-hand ramshaft bracket that has the valve chest on it. But it's the same size bolt as the bottom ones here, 1/2-inch UNC. So I'm thinking I will torque those right-hand bolts to the same spec as these 1/2-inch for the cover of 75 pound-feet. And did you notice? I actually said pound-feet instead of foot-pounds this time. Like I talked about in the previous video, this is a metal-to-metal fit. It's a jointed fit. You're supposed to use a jointing compound on this. I'm using this Permatech gasket dressing and sealant. It's very similar to Halimar Blue, at least from what they said online. And you know how you can trust the internet, right? Internet's always right. We also have to smear some on this sealing ring thing that goes right there. And I'm also going to apply it onto the other surface because the instructions say to apply to both surfaces. If you remember when I took this out, I used the long bolts as a handle through the top. I'm going to replicate that here. Best as I can. Whoa. All right. There we go. That's on there. It's at least in a position where I can move it around a little bit. I have this ready to go on. Does that go in there? Just like that. Right? Then there's one of the actual bolts for the top. Put that in place. Then use the long bolt that I had inside here. That in place. I'll take the top bolt out. Put it in its proper hole. Put the other short bolt on top in place. And then start threading in the bottom. I don't know if the video was flashing in and out. The sunshine was just shining right on top of this, right on the camera lens. So I put up a little block for that. All right, I put a little grease on the tip of that thread. I'll do the same for this other bolt that goes on the bottom. That's on there. Okay, here's something. Somebody answer me in the comments below. I can't remember. I think that there's a groove right here on the nut. Let's see if you can see it. You see that groove on one side? There's no groove on the other. Is the groove supposed to go to the inside, so to speak? Or is it the groove supposed to go to the outside? I think the groove is supposed to go in, toward the casting. I'm not sure though. Somebody answer me in the comments below. If y'all would, there on online, if you would reach out your hand and push against this long bolt so I don't have to twist myself in a pretzel to get over there and do it. I mean, come on, guys. You're not going to help me out? I mean, I've got the fender in my underarm. And it doesn't feel good. All right. All that's left to do with those is tighten them up. 140, 140, 75, 75. And since it's not specified in the manual anywhere that I could find, these are the same diameter bolts. They're 1/2" UNC bolts. I'm going to torque those down to 75 pound-feet as well. And while you're down here, don't forget to put that bracket back on that bolt. in that bracket onto that bolt. Don't forget. Okay. So don't forget to put these 2 bolts in too. Sorry I didn't do it on camera, but the afternoon sun here is just washing out everything so much, and video is just horrible. But anyway, these are 9/16 bolt heads. They go in and get torqued to 15 pound-feet. So make sure that you put those in. Well, we're done with this part of the reinstallation process. The ramshaft is back on, the right-hand ramshaft bracket's back on, the valve chest is back on, the left-hand cover is back on, and everything is torqued down. Next steps will be in future videos to show you how the quadrant goes back on, the adjustments associated with it, getting the components inside the right-hand ramshaft bracket back installed, and I think that'll do it for the hydraulics. We'll also need to test it and get everything underway. So there'll be a little bit more content coming out around the refurbishment of the hydraulics around this tractor. I can't do everything in one video. I wish I could, but I can't. It'd be very, very long. So I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something, maybe. I know I did. Thank you to Ollek and the advice that he's given out on the forums over the years. That's the post you saw in this video was one that I found on the forum that he had given to somebody, and I pulled it and it worked out really, really nice to be able to install the valve chest without the lube pipe falling down. So again, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of it maybe. Thank you for watching. Y'all have a good day.